I was still holding the wine glass when it shattered in my hand. Not from squeezing it, not from some dramatic outburst, but because my fingers just gave up. They forgot what they were doing. My brain short-circuited at the exact moment Elliot leaned in across the table and whispered something into my wife's ear. He was smiling. Lydia was smiling. Everyone at the table thought it was funny. Some inside joke, I guess. Except I didn't hear the joke. I didn't laugh. I just sat there, blood seeping from my palm into the white linen napkin, and all I could think was, this was planned. Not the glass breaking, obviously. Not the blood. But this setup, this party, this seating arrangement, the sudden open bar, the slow dancing under low lights, the way Lydia's coworkers stared at me like I was the one who needed to prove something. And Elliot? He was the ringleader. I didn't even know the guy until tonight. But from the second I walked in, he had that look, like he knew my name, my credit score, and what my face looked like when I cried. He toasted to long nights and even longer partnerships while staring right at my wife. He made some comment about sharing work stress that got a laugh from two other women at the table. I didn't catch the punchline. I was still trying to understand why Lydia had worn perfume I hadn't smelled on her in years. But when Elliot leaned over and whispered to her, that's when something clicked. Lydia didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She smiled like that whisper belonged to her. And that's when the glass broke. My wife didn't even notice. She was too busy laughing at a man who had no idea I'd been watching him since appetizers. No idea I'd noticed the bracelet he gave her. No idea I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was evidence. And soon, I'd be the problem. No one asked why my hand was bleeding. Not even Lydia. She glanced at the napkin briefly, just a flick of the eyes, and then turned back to Elliot, laughing at whatever anecdote he was unspooling about their insane late nights during the Baxter merger. I could barely hear it through the ringing in my ears. I sat there, bleeding quietly, while my wife let another man speak for her. I excused myself without causing a scene, because I was still stupid enough to care how I looked. In the men's room, I rinsed the cut and stared at myself in the mirror for longer than I want to admit. The fluorescent lights made my face look older. My eyes dull. There were creases in my forehead I swore weren't there a month ago. I looked like a man who hadn't slept in his own marriage for years. I didn't want to admit it, but there it was. And Elliot? He saw it. He preyed on it. I pressed paper towels to the wound until the bleeding slowed. That's when I heard the door swing open, and his voice followed, as casual as ever. You okay, man? I didn't turn around. I just watched him in the mirror. Elliot. Smug. Relaxed. No urgency. Like he didn't just turn my world inside out at a catered party with a free coat check. I'm fine, I muttered. He stepped up to the sink beside me, washed his hands like it was a ritual, like he was cleaning off fingerprints I hadn't seen him leave. I was worried you took that the wrong way back there. I said nothing. He kept going. Lydia talks about you a lot. She says you're steady, solid, grounded. That's good. She needs that. He paused, flicked his fingers under the automatic dryer, then looked at me. Really looked. But steady things crack, too. Under pressure. That's when I turned to him. What's your problem with me? Elliot smiled, and for the first time, there was no humor in it. Just quiet cruelty. My problem, he said softly. No problem at all. I just like to know who I'm dealing with. Then he left. Just like that. And I stood there, my heart pounding, trying to decode what the hell that was. A threat? A warning? Some weird alpha posturing? But the most disturbing part? He wasn't wrong. I was cracking. Not just from tonight, but from weeks, months of not understanding who my wife had become. She'd started working late, canceling dinners, avoiding eye contact during arguments. And now, here was this man, this Elliot, dressed like a Bond villain, inserting himself into our life like he already had a seat at the table. I returned to the party, quieter, sharper. Lydia was by the fireplace with two women I didn't recognize. Elliot was gone, or at least I thought he was, until I saw him near the coat room, speaking to a woman I knew wasn't his wife. Hand on her back, whispering. The same whisper he used with Lydia. A pattern, a performance. And I realized something bone deep and sickening. Elliot wasn't just testing me. He was testing her. And whatever this test was, I was already failing. I don't know what kind of man Elliot thought I was, but I don't think he expected me to show back up with a new drink and a straight face. That's the thing about people like him. They get off on reaction. They throw a spark and wait for the explosion. but I've spent my whole life being underestimated. And now, I was learning how to weaponize it. Lydia didn't notice I'd come back. She was at the bar, her hand on Elliot's wrist, laughing softly into his shoulder like they were in on some shared dream. One of her coworkers, a woman in a red jumpsuit I didn't recognize, stood next to them, visibly uncomfortable. Her eyes darted to me, then to Lydia, then back to her phone. For a moment, I thought about walking out, just vanishing into the elevator, driving home, and leaving them to their little pantomime of professional chemistry and late-night project bonding. But then I remembered the folder. 2 weeks ago, Lydia had left her work laptop open in the kitchen while she was on a Zoom call in the bedroom. I hadn't snooped, at least not at first. But when the screen dimmed, and I moved to close the lid, I saw it. A folder on her desktop labeled Vegas Pitch _alt_V2. Harmless, right? But something about the name stuck in my head. Because Lydia hadn't been to Vegas. Not recently. Not ever, as far as I knew. That folder had haunted me for days. I'd even looked it up. Her firm had made a failed bid on a project in Nevada earlier that year. So why was there an alt version saved last month? I hadn't opened it. Not yet. I told myself I respected her privacy. But now, watching her run her fingers along another man's sleeve in full view of her peers, I felt like an idiot for giving her so much rope. They say you should trust your partner until you're given a reason not to. I'd just been given one. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of them. Casual, nothing obvious. I wasn't going to post it, or confront her, or do anything loud. Not yet. I was going to gather evidence. Elliot didn't notice me at first, but Lydia did. Her laugh cut off fast, like someone pressed mute. She pulled her hand back and took a step sideways. Elliot glanced over his shoulder and gave me a slow, almost congratulatory smile. That was the moment I knew I wasn't crazy. That folder? That whisper in the ballroom? That woman in red looking uncomfortable? This wasn't just office flirtation. It was a chessboard. I had been moved into a corner while everyone around me clapped and smiled and said it was just a game. So I smiled back. I walked toward them like nothing was wrong and asked Lydia if she wanted another drink. She said no, visibly rattled, and I made a point to linger. Elliot, I said, turning to him. You said you worked on the Baxter merger? He nodded, easy. For about 6 months. Lydia and I were pretty much attached at the hip. Oh, I said, pretending to laugh. That must have been intense. It was, he said without missing a beat, locking eyes with me. And Lydia? She just stared down at her empty glass like it held the answers. That night, after the party, she didn't speak much on the ride home. She said she was tired. Said her heels hurt. Said she had a deadline in the morning. I didn't push. I let her talk herself out. But when she went to bed, I stayed in the kitchen. And for the first time, I opened that folder. Inside were 5 PDFs. And 1 video. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of what I found, but because of what I didn't. I sat in the dark kitchen, the only sound being the quiet hum of the fridge and the occasional groan of the house settling. Lydia's purse was on the counter, her heels abandoned at the front door. Upstairs, the shower hissed, then stopped. Pipes knocked. Silence returned. My laptop screen glowed coldly in front of me. The contents of that Vegas Pitch _alt_V2 folder spread out like a confession that hadn't learned how to admit guilt. The 5 PDFs were corporate decks, polished and impersonal, strategy outlines, budget splits, projections. Nothing damning, nothing emotional. But the video was different. It wasn't scandalous, not in the way I feared. No bedroom scenes, no blurred hotel logos. But it was personal. It was a screen recording of Lydia and Elliot rehearsing a joint pitch over Zoom, maybe late at night, judging by their sleepy expressions and the way she kept adjusting her hoodie like she was fresh out of bed. At the 16-minute mark, the slides went dark for a while. They didn't disconnect. They just talked. And in that talk, somewhere between a laugh about their boss's weird socks and a debate over fonts, she said something that hooked into my spine. Sometimes I forget what it's like to be around someone who listens. Elliot had chuckled and leaned closer to the webcam like they were sitting across a small table in a candlelit cafe. That's what I'm here for. Lydia didn't reply immediately. She just nodded, then sighed. It was long, familiar. The kind of sigh I'd heard 100 times after family dinners, after fights, after birthdays where I'd bought the wrong gift or said the wrong thing. A sigh that said, I'm here, but I wish I weren't. I shut the video off. I didn't need to see more. That sentence was worse than anything physical, worse than a kiss, worse than a night in some hotel. Because it meant this started long ago. It meant she wasn't just slipping away. She had already gone. When Lydia came down to the kitchen 10 minutes later, wrapped in her bathrobe, she jumped when she saw me still sitting there. "I thought you were asleep," she said, reaching for her water bottle. "I watched your presentation," I replied. She froze, then recovered. "What?" "The one in the Vegas folder." Her eyes narrowed. "You went through my work files?" I closed the laptop, and it was just there. "That doesn't give you the right." I let the silence linger like a punishment. "You said something. In the video." Lydia tensed. "What are you even trying to do, Lars?" I stood. "I'm trying to understand how I became background noise in my own house." Her face twisted, not with guilt, but with something sharper. Like my words had confirmed something for her. Like she'd wanted me to find it. Like this was all a test she had designed, and I had finally failed. "You never asked how I was," she said. "Not really. You just assumed everything was fine because I wasn't shouting." "That's not true." She smiled sadly. "Isn't it?" And then she walked past me, slowly, her hand brushing my shoulder. Not lovingly, not apologetically, just marking the end of something. I didn't sleep. Again. Instead, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the small sounds of her settling into bed beside me. The sheets rustling, the soft buzz of her phone screen lighting up, a faint notification chime, a new message. From Elliot? From someone else? I didn't ask, but I started to plan. Because whatever game they were playing, I wasn't out of moves yet. And the next one would leave a mark. It had been 3 days since the party. 3 days since I watched my wife smile at another man like he was gravity and she'd been waiting her whole life to fall. 3 days since the folder, the video, the sentence that cracked me down the middle. Lydia had returned to her routines. She moved through the house like a choreographed ghost, everything graceful and efficient, like someone who had rehearsed the role of a wife until it no longer required emotion. She packed the dishwasher like a technician, kissed me goodbye like a nurse might greet a long-term patient. And she never once brought up what I saw. And I didn't either. Not directly. But I started changing small things. First, I moved my work computer from the basement to the dining room table, right in the heart of the house. It was symbolic, sure, but it was also tactical. Lydia was used to me disappearing downstairs for hours at a time, headphones on, tuned out. That was how she'd grown used to living beside me. Me, her silent roommate, her built-in excuse for detachment. Now I was present, watching, listening, existing in the same space she occupied. Then I changed the Wi-Fi password. She asked once, briefly, on Tuesday night, "Did the internet go down?" "Nope," I said, not looking up. "Just reset everything. Too many weird connections on the network. Could have been from your work laptop. You might want to update your security settings." She didn't question it, just nodded slowly and said, "Right. Good idea." I wasn't trying to trap her. I wasn't even trying to hack her. I just wanted to see what she'd do when her illusion of invisibility was interrupted. The next day, I found a new folder on her laptop, Temp Reports Q1. Hidden deep. Same structure. Same size. No password. Inside, another video. But this one wasn't a Zoom call. It was a screen recording of her Slack messages. Dozens of them. With Elliot. The timestamps were spread across 3 months. Nothing overtly explicit. No declarations of love. No dirty jokes. But the intimacy was there, in the familiarity, the rhythm, the inside jokes that no longer needed setup. And there was a recurring phrase he kept sending her. "You're too good for background noise." It came up 7 times. Each time after she'd vented. After she'd said something about how I never asked about her deadlines. About how I forgot her birthday last year. About how he gets so quiet it feels like I'm alone even when I'm not. I remember reading that and actually feeling guilty. For a moment, I forgot she was the one lying. Because in that moment, I was the background noise. The hum in the walls. The man who could sit across from her for 3 meals a day and never ask the right question. But then I remembered the party. The whisper. The bracelet. The way she'd flinched when I walked up beside them. And I remembered. She didn't just find connection. She built a cover for it. That was worse. That night, I did something I haven't done in years. I cooked. From scratch. Lydia came home late, of course. She walked into the smell of roasted garlic and thyme chicken, and her face twisted, just a flicker, into something unfamiliar. Like suspicion. I didn't know we had guests, she said, hanging her coat. No guests, I said. Just thought we should have dinner. Like people do. She looked around. What's the occasion? There isn't one. We ate in silence for a bit. She picked at her food, clearly uneasy. I watched her try to decide if this was a trap. If I'd found something. If I was baiting her. Finally, she asked, is something going on? I met her gaze, deadpan. You tell me. She didn't respond. Just slowly put down her fork and said, Lars, if this is about the party. It's not about the party. Then what? I leaned back in my chair. Just trying to remember what it feels like to matter to you. Her face paled like I'd slapped her. For the first time in months, she didn't have a polished response. No well-rehearsed deflection. No tired sigh. Just quiet. And that silence? It told me everything. She wasn't ready for me to push back. She wasn't ready for me to wake up. But I was wide awake now. And I wasn't going back to sleep. Revenge isn't loud. That's what people get wrong. They think it's some grand explosion, a screaming match in the driveway, a suitcase flung down the stairs, a dramatic confession recorded on a phone. But real revenge? The kind that rots from the inside out. It's a whisper, a nod, a smile that hides a slow knife. And I was done playing the fool. The night after our awkward dinner, Lydia got a call from work. Said she'd be late. Didn't offer details, didn't need to. Just grabbed her tote and kissed me like a dentist checking for cavities. Clinical, brief, forgettable. I waited 10 minutes after she left before opening my laptop. I'd spent the past few days teaching myself things. Boring things. Necessary things. Like how to pull data from a Slack export file. How to read email headers. How to dig into metadata on PDF revisions. Nothing illegal. Just a deeper understanding of what Lydia had tried to cover up under the polite camouflage of Google Docs and calendar invites. The more I pulled, the more the rot showed. There weren't nudes or love letters. This wasn't that kind of affair. No, this was corporate intimacy. Emotional sinking. A slow erosion of boundaries. Hundreds of messages between her and Elliot. Many deleted, some recoverable. Each one another thread in the web they'd spun right under my nose. The worst one wasn't even recent. It was from 5 months ago. Sometimes I wish you were the one waiting for me at home. She'd written that at 1:13 a.m. Elliot never responded. Not because he was surprised, but because he didn't need to. I sat back in my chair and stared at the line until my screen dimmed. I don't remember how long. Just sat there, blinking slowly, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. The only thought echoing in my head, she made a wish. And I wasn't in it. That night, I didn't confront her. Instead, I wrote a list. Not of people, not of plans, just truths. She's not coming back because she already left. She doesn't feel guilty because she thinks I gave her a reason. She didn't confess because she didn't have to. She wanted me to disappear without asking questions. But I wasn't disappearing. I was documenting. I started quietly pulling copies of our financials. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I didn't trust her anymore. I checked our joint savings, her credit card statements, her new phone plan, and what I found changed everything. A payment, recurring, to a co-working space across town. A space she'd never mentioned. It wasn't far from Elliot's listed residence in the HR directory. I only found that detail because I remembered he'd once bragged about living 2 blocks from the lake, while drunk at the office party. It all started aligning. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd built a second world without me. And it was organized. Clean. Neat. It was the Lydia I remembered from college. Meticulous, unshakable, always 3 steps ahead of the professor. Only now, I was the exam. I printed everything. Emails, calendars, financial statements, message logs. I put it in a plain brown envelope and labeled it with a single word, when. Not if, when. Because I wasn't going to confront her until she gave me the perfect reason. The kind of reason that could not be talked down, explained away, or patched up with some half-cooked apology about how she just felt disconnected. I wasn't going to storm into her betrayal with fists and raised voices. I was going to walk out of it clean, leave her standing in the ash of the life she quietly burned down while smiling at me across the breakfast table. Let her realize too late that the man she took for granted was already gone by the time she thought she won. But first, I needed one more lie from her. Just one. And she handed it to me the next morning. It came on a Thursday morning. Gray sky, black coffee, silence between us broken only by the sound of toast popping up and her slippers on the hardwood. Lydia moved around the kitchen like someone half present, her mind already at the office or wherever she said she was going. I watched her quietly, the same way you watch the final pieces of a chess game fall into place. She buttered her toast without looking up. I'll be out late tonight. Board meeting ran long last week. Might again. I stirred my coffee. Waited. She finally glanced up. Don't wait up. That was it. No mention of the co-working space. No reference to the client she was supposedly meeting there 3 days prior. No sign that she even remembered I existed outside this quiet house and its dull routines. I nodded. Of course. Hope it goes well. And then I smiled. She mistook it for support. She smiled back. I almost pitied her, because Lydia had just made her final move. And she didn't know I already had her checkmate boxed, printed, and waiting. She left at 7:11 a.m. By 7:13, I had the envelope in my hand. When I carried it with me, calm and quiet, to my car. Drove 30 minutes to a lawyer's office I'd researched weeks ago. I'd booked the appointment under a fake consulting inquiry. Not because I was trying to ambush her with legal action, but because I wanted to be prepared before she knew there was a war. The lawyer was sharp, young, smart, listened more than he talked. When I handed him the folder, he flipped through it slowly. His face didn't change much, but the nod he gave me near the end said everything I needed to hear. You've done your homework. She gave me time, I said. We talked options, clean exit, strategic filings, protection of assets, quiet transitions. Everything Lydia had assumed I was too spineless to prepare for. But I wasn't looking to gut her. I just wanted to leave without begging, without a meltdown, without becoming a story she could twist for sympathy at brunch. That night, I cooked again. Same as before. She came home at 10:14 p.m., smelling like expensive soap in someone else's apartment. No mention of the board. No apology. Just a yawn and a shrug as she dropped her bag on the table. Long day, she said. I'm sure. She didn't notice that I'd moved the cutlery. She didn't notice that her key no longer opened the drawer where our mortgage documents were kept. She didn't notice the small blinking light on the security camera now facing the front porch. Because Lydia had been living in autopilot. Confident, dismissive, thoughtless. And that's the exact moment when people like her make the biggest mistakes. That weekend, I told her I'd be going on a short solo trip. Cabin. Upstate. No cell reception. She didn't ask questions. Just gave a generic nod like someone half listening to a podcast. I wasn't going upstate. I was moving out. Quietly. Legally. Strategically. I had a moving team booked for Saturday morning, documents pre-drafted, and mail forwarding already in place. Her name wasn't on most of the furniture. I'd leave her what she came with. And when she woke up on Sunday, I wouldn't be there. There'd just be a letter. Not a rage note. Not an accusation. Just facts. A mirror, placed perfectly, reflecting back the silence she'd surrounded me with. The last line would read, "You taught me how to leave without needing to raise my voice. Thank you for the lesson." And then it would be her move. But the board would already be empty. The movers were fast. Professional. Barely spoke, which I appreciated. I'd boxed everything I planned to take ahead of time. Nothing more, nothing less. My books, my old typewriter, a few framed photos I hadn't seen Lydia glance at in years. I left the TV, the couch, even the espresso machine she said I never figured out anyway. It wasn't about punishment. It was about precision. I left the letter on the kitchen table. Folded. No envelope. Just one page. One final conversation in a house that had become a museum of things we didn't say. I didn't linger. Didn't take one last look at the bedroom. Didn't run my fingers along the fridge magnets or the bathroom door she never fully shut. I just walked out and locked the door behind me. Not because I was angry, but because I was done. It felt like breathing for the first time in years. The cabin I told her about? It did exist, just not for the reasons I gave her. I rented it for 1 week. Not to hide, but to exhale. To sit in silence. Not the kind she weaponized, but the kind that heals. I brought no Wi-Fi, no plans. Just a bottle of bourbon, an old notebook, and an almost finished novel I hadn't touched in 6 months. That first night, I slept like a man whose name had just been returned to him. No dreams. No noise. Just peace. Lydia didn't call. She didn't text. But on the third day, I got an email. Short. Terse. Just one sentence. You didn't have to do it like this. I stared at that line for a long time. Then I closed my laptop. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because she was wrong. I didn't have to do it like this. I had tried every other way. A week later, I met someone. Not romantically, just organically. Her name was Rachel. She owned the bookstore in the nearest town. I'd wandered in looking for a charger and walked out with a copy of The Stranger and an invitation to a poetry reading. She was kind, curious. She asked questions Lydia never had. And for the first time in years, I heard myself answering honestly. That night, walking back from the bookstore, stars spilling across the sky like confetti, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Lydia, not even at Elliot. Because they didn't break me. They revealed me. The man who used to stay quiet to keep the peace? He was gone. The man who apologized just to stop arguments before they started? Gone. The man who waited and hoped and wilted in silence? Gone. I'd replaced him with someone better. Not louder. Not cruel. Just present. A week later, back in the city, I filed the papers. Cleanly. Calmly. No screaming. No fights. No accusations. Just the final move of a game I no longer needed to win. Months passed. The house sold. She kept her job. I kept my dignity. And that was the best revenge of all. Because while she stayed in the same circle of whispers and late-night strategy calls, I had changed zip codes, routines, and even the way I walked into a room. I wasn't the background anymore. I was the main character. And for the first time in years, I liked the sound of my own voice.